Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the official job changes for Dawntrail. No more media tour, no more saying, oh, they'll buff it on launch. No, we now have the launch numbers, and while I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly how all that's going to crunch down and be balanced, I'm sure people have already been hard at work. We're going to be looking for any major changes from what we discussed before at media tour and what is actually available here on the live servers. I have my thumbnails kind of off stream or off screen from the media tour so I can do some ready comparisons, and I've already taken a peek at some things here. Fortunately, I also have chat open on the side. I totally welcome them to, if they think there's a change on a job I absolutely need to take note of, then I'm sure they'll make sure that I don't miss it. But we've got a lot to get through, so let's get started. Now, I have already spoken with a tank friend of mine who made note of only one major tank thing that I need to actually look at. When it came to all the other jobs, I already peeked at some of them, and functionally, these are all relatively the same, at least for Paladin, Warrior, and Dark Knight. He did make particular note of Gunbreaker, however, and it was specifically with the potencies of Gunbreaker. So, as long as you remember the media tour stuff for the other tanks, then you're largely in the know. You know, some potency upgrades via traits, you know, things like Goring Blade Ready and the condensation of Fight or Flight being added to that. But from what I understand, there's not a whole lot that is missed here other than those Gunbreaker potency buffs. Now, the state of Gunbreaker, looking over some of the numbers from Endwalker, sort of, I guess, it gives you insight as to why that is. That's almost like a post Endwalker. A lot of these jobs are very similar to their Endwalker counterpart, so it does almost come off as just an Endwalker patch buff to most of them. But for Paladin here, as long as you were well aware of the media tour stuff, all of that is pretty much going to be the same. The three-part combo that they added for Atonement with Supplication and Sepulture, potency buffs to Confiteor, the different blades, Guardian being added with the potency shield here, the 1000 potency shield, Imperator, Blade of Honor, yeah, all this stuff that we already knew was coming and new, and it largely still needs to be seen in game is there. And again, same for Warrior and same for Dark Knight, it seems. Now, there is one other thing on Dark Knight that was confusing a lot of people that are interesting. And as regards to Warrior, where we are right now, something in the media tour that I made note of was some AoE potency nerfs. And I think that was to make up for the fact that they now have those added end abilities as well as the extra OGCD and Inner Chaos. So it seems to be more of a balanced bit, more so than anything else. You can especially note it, I believe, with Chaotic Cyclone, which had its potency reduced a little bit. And I think Decimate also, yeah, similarly had its potency reduced. I don't remember, does Mithril Tempest has it reduced? Yeah, Mithril Tempest had it reduced. Yeah, that was, all of that was similar in the media tour. I made mention of that. And so yeah, there we go. So yeah, the thing is AoE is 4 targets now for Warrior. Yeah, that's definitely a strange thing. That being said, I think the reason is largely because of adding Primal Ruination and Primal Rend. Now, whether or not that's a change they'll actually keep, bit of a question mark for that one. But I have a feeling Warriors won't really mind all that much. Largely when you're AoEing in big packs. It makes your 2-target a little bit simpler, since you'll just have to pick a target, or if you need to bounce between targets, something like second to last phase in DSR, you probably just won't stand in the middle and do a 2-target. But most of the time when you're AoEing, you're largely doing it in big packs. So in the majority of circumstances, you probably won't notice the change. But if you're on a target, if you're in a group of 3 mobs or less, yeah, if you're pulling 1 pack at a time, then things like Decimate only being a gain on 4+ targets, that could be very, very important. There are some other abilities that do that as well, but chat's jumping ahead a little bit to some jobs that we are not on yet. Now, probably the most confusing thing I saw about Dark Knight in their job guide was the separation of Salted Earth and Salt and Darkness. Now, to be clear, the media tour did allow for those to be put on different buttons because they are part of the job consolidation or the action consolidation button system, where you can choose to make them 2 separate buttons or choose to have Salted Earth become a different button. The reason why it's noted here in the revisions that no longer changes Salt and Darkness upon execution is because you have the choice of whether or not it does. That is technically a new option. I think that's poorly worded, more so than anything else. And in case you were worried about this, also having a 20-second recast, that's just so you can't use it more than once in a single salt and light. So that's all it is. It's poorly worded, but functionally, that is not any different than it was before, unless you want to put them on 2 separate buttons for any particular reason. So definitely don't worry about that. Now, Chad has also told me that Primal Wrath saw a bit of a buff since Mediator, but given the functional use of it being exactly the same in most circumstances, I don't think that's really going to matter all that much. And yeah, that's all that really matters for that one. The 4-target AoE on Decimate, definitely more important. But like I said, most of my tank friends, the one I saw in particular comment on this, is a pretty substantial buff to all of the single target potencies for Gunbreaker. Now, I know for a fact off the top of my head, this is already 20 potency higher. And I'm willing to bet that if I look through all of my thumbnails, that a lot of them are 10 to 20 potency higher. In fact, almost all of them are probably 10 to 20 potency higher. Yeah, Keen Edge was 280. Here it's 300. Brutal Shell was 380. Actually, is that the same? Actually, this is the same, but let's see what some of the other skills are like. Solid Barrel sitting at 460. Let's see if that we have here. Solid Barrel, there it is. Solid Barrel was 440 in the Mediator, so that's another 20 potency buff. Yeah, so that just seems like there's some solid potency buffs across the board. Even Burst Strike, yeah, 20 potency here, 20 potency there. Almost everything that got a potency buff seems to have gone up by 20 potency. Sonic Break still exactly the same. Gnashing Fang, though, let's see. Gnashing Fang was 460 in the Mediator. Oh, my God. That's much more than 20. That's like 100 potency over the Mediator number. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, that's a lot. So they really cracked out the combo for that one. There's one skill in particular that I really got to see. I doubt that it changed. Okay, no, imagine if they buffed Double Down. That would be so toxic. Yeah, Savage Claw, Gnashing Fang. Huge potency buffs coming out for that. Oh, my. Actually, wait. Savage Claw? Wait a minute. No. Am I looking at... Oh, no, I'm looking at Wicked Talon. That's why. So, yeah, Savage Claw only got a 20 potency buff. Gnashing, I think I was looking at, hold on. Let me go. I was looking at the wrong skills. It was a 40 potency buff for Gnashing Fang, a 20 potency buff for Savage Claw, and Wicked Talon stayed the same. I got my skills mixed up when I was looking at my thumb. I was like, whoa, that's way too much. But yeah, another 40 here, another 20 here, but 60 potency added to that combo as a whole. And then let's see what we have to Jugular Rip and stuff like that. And make sure I'm actually on Jugular Rip this time and not on the wrong one on the side right here. Jugular Rip was 240 in the Mediator. It's 240 here. All right, looks like Abdomen Tear and the other ones might still be the same. And keep in mind, we are not comparing the revisions to the live servers. We're comparing them to the Mediator. These revisions are comparing them to the live servers, which is the important bit to actually bear in mind. Yeah, it looks like these largely stayed the same. Abdomen Tear. And then Eye Gouge, 320, 320. There we go. All right, yeah. So there's definitely some strong potency gains for Gunbreaker. And Gunbreaker has always kind of been perceived as a job that's been in a really good spot, especially because it performs really well at places like level 70 and level 80. But I know some Gunbreakers were hoping for some potency buffs going into the expansion, just not to Double Down, which is one of the reasons why their DPS can be so toxic as it is. But potency buffs, I'm honestly, I didn't want to get too much into them, but that one's just a really significant one because it's a big upgrade over what their Endwalker numbers were and even what their Mediator numbers were, which were already an increase over their Endwalker numbers. So it seems like they're trying to bring them up a little bit more into the forefront with that big damage. So we're probably going to see quite a few Gunbreaker. I was actually going to level it as my first tank potentially, if not Paladin, but maybe I'll do Dark Knight. Make the healers work a little bit more. That's what they're asking for anyway. Now, moving on to healers, I have already heard that there are a few major changes, but it's realistically, of course, DPS focused, in that any ability that wasn't damage neutral, for example, we should probably start on the most important one, Sage, something like Numa, for example, it seems, and we're going to go double check that based on what I was told, that was made damage neutral. So this is now 360. And let's go over to Dosis 3, 360. So Numa is damage neutral. However, people have taken note that Macrocosmos is not damage neutral. So that was the first thing I heard any healer talk about. Not the only changes to the jobs from the Meteor, but Macrocosmos on one target still lost. Personally, if any ability is going to be not damage neutral, I think Macrocosmos probably deserves it. Thinking back to the start of Endwalker, Macrocosmos literally invalidated an entire 60 seconds of a fight in that of Phoenix. And so I think it being 10 potency under, 20 potency, I think you'll be fine. All right? Not to mention in situations, other situations where it was good, situations like Meteors in DSR, any sort of ad phase where it happens to be available, it's still an incredibly strong dual damage and healing tool. But we'll see if that change actually sticks because it's likely to be a major point of contention. Now, like I said, those weren't the only changes. And of course, DPS-related changes become the first and foremost. At the Meteor, one of the first things I checked for Sage was whether or not its new Eucrasian dot could stack with Eucrasian Dosis. And I said I didn't think it would actually stay that way. And sure enough, Eucrasian Dyscrasia cannot be stacked with Eucrasian Dosis 3. All of the old healers had their hopes up. And keep in mind, it wasn't going to be a huge gain, even if you could. In fact, Eucrasian Dyscrasia actually not stacking became sort of a movement tool for Sage, where even if you were to take a potency hit on using it, it would have been kind of like a skill expression level thing to do. Like, oh, you know, I need to move here and I can't really make a Dosis cast count. Even if Eucrasian Dosis would be a loss in most cases, being able to instant cast it while moving would open up damage opportunities to at least optimize on situations like that. But that's no longer even the case. I didn't expect that they would have it stack. Even if it did stack, I did think they were going to reduce the potency so it wouldn't be a gain on one target. But it seems that that's the direction that it goes. Now, of course, in dungeons, go nuts. You know, you're still going to apply it. It's still an AoE dot. Can't go wrong with it. But that little bit of tech was definitely noticed. And the only other major issue I've seen any healers talking about that was addressed from Meteor is actually Astro. Now, Astro had a major MP economy problem when they had their draws reduced. It was 5% for a draw once per minute. Compared to what they had now, like in Endwalker, that was never going to be acceptable in any capacity. And as such, that was one of the things that was definitely addressed here. 20% mana back on Astral and Umbral draw to make it so you have this like extra MP economy. If that didn't happen, even if all the other Astro changes were good, that alone would have like doomed the job until it was adjusted. Like that would have had to have been an adjusted in 2 to 4 weeks kind of deal, or the job would have been unplayable in like serious content. Like in casual content, it still would have been noticeable, but in serious content, it would have been absolutely, that would have been rough. So glad to see that has changed. Other than that, I don't think anything of too much import was actually changed from what we saw in Meteor. Definitely Sage and Astro at the top of the list as the most important things. And that means there are some things that I didn't see change that, quite frankly, I don't think were designed perfectly in the first place. Big example still is definitely Temperance's Divine Grace on White Mage. I get that they want to make it a combo skill. I get that's kind of their thematic thing, this expansion with new skills. But Divine Caress, I feel like should just, I don't know, maybe just allow you to use it whenever and not put the 30-second limit on it, because it really doesn't feel good that both of White Mage's major AoE mitigation-related tools have to be so closely stacked together. There's that 10-second window where Temperance wears off where you can still use Divine Grace and they function separately. But that for me, I don't know. That was just kind of like an issue that I had with it personally. And so maybe they'll make that adjustment at some point. I think that even with a lot of the healer skills in general, having the follow-up skill just, I don't think it works quite so well on that role as it does with like the tanks and the DPS. So that's just me though. That's just me. I don't know if that's been an agreeable thing amongst the healers, of which should be the ones making most of the criticisms and changes and asking for certain things, but hey. So going on to melee DPS. This is going to be the next big thing. Now, I don't need to talk much about Viper in terms of PvE. It's worth noting that Viper got a defensive skill in PvP, which is hilarious. But I have been informed that Monk is the thing that I should be paying the most attention to. Now, Chats also wants me to make mention that Astro did get some potency buffs, specifically to Oracle. But, I mean, yeah, that's nice. But once every, like, 2 minutes, it's like, I'm not gonna make too much of a major note over Astro's damage contributions. You know, that's it's good. They needed it. It definitely needed to get buffed. But now I have been told to go into Monk, but I haven't exactly been told why. Now I have to assume it's because of an issue with the Mediator numbers with Bootshine and Dragon Kick. I've also been told Demolish has been changed a little bit. But essentially, from the Mediator build, it was never worth using Dragon Kick. Ever. That's a problem. Like, just numerically, it didn't make sense to ever bother using Dragon Kick. So it would have been Bootshine only if not for some sort of number adjustment. Now, let me grab my number adjustments here. Let me grab the numbers that I have originally. And that way I can better judge. So Dragon Kick was 320 in the Mediator. It is 320 here. But the big thing is this. It no longer increases the potency of Leaping Opal by 100. It increases it by 200. So Leaping Opal being the upgrade to Bootshine, even though people will probably still just say Bootshine a lot of the time. Yeah, that is to make it so that it is always a gain to Dragon Kick. Because Leaping Opal without that was 360. Well, it was, let's see. Yeah, no, it was delivers an attack. Yeah, so it was, wait a minute. So it was, all right, I got what they did. So Leaping Opal was 360 at base and 460 with the buff. Now it's 260 at base and 460 with the buff. So essentially, it's the same number, but they shifted most of the power into making sure that you got that Leaping Opal buff from Dragon Kick. So it's the same, but how you access the power has been adjusted to make it so that you do have to Dragon Kick in order to actually have the correct potency for it. Now, I was specifically told about Demolish. I don't know if that's because of, like, if it wasn't kept up with, because we already knew the Demolish dot was gone. So let me see what I have here for Demolish, or I suppose for Pouncing Coerl, if anything. You know, so we've got that right here. Let's see, yeah, Demolish, 360, 400, increases by 100. And then Pouncing Coerl is 340. Maybe Pouncing Coerl changed? It's got to be that. It's got to be that. Pouncing Coerl, 340 to 440, and then 500 for the potency. All right, so it looks like the only thing that was changed is they fixed the number on it. I don't see any functional difference. Like, this explains everything, but this still gets to the exact same potency it was in Mediator. Unless there was something else I missed here. So potency-wise, Demolish. 3 stacks of Coerl's Fury. Yeah, that's normal. That's normal. Okay. I don't see any major difference there. That's all exactly the same. Riddle of Fire, let me just do that. I'm seeing that Fire's Reply got a slight nerf from Mediator. Interesting. All right, let's see what we've got there. 1100, that's right. I think it was 1200 in the Mediator build. Fortunately, I have that right here. Oh, it was 1300 in the Mediator build. Goodness. Yeah, so that took a little bit of a potency hit. I was a little concerned with them having a 1300 potency skill, so that's probably for the better. However, Wind's Reply got a 100 potency buff. I'm sorry, no. Wind's Reply got another 100 potency nerf. Like, I went the other way with it. I read them backwards. Yeah, and Wind's Reply is also 100 potency lower than it was. Yeah, they probably determined that that was a lot to be giving Monk. And you know what? Given the amount of personal buffs that they have, I know they don't have as many now, but the fact they had Riddle of Fire and Brotherhood guaranteed on top of these big potency skills without having to worry about any job synergy, yeah, that's probably the reason. Now, was there anything else of major import that wasn't known from Mediator for Monk? Let's see. Perfect balance. Yeah. Okay. Changing to raptor form. Changing to... Okay. That seems all normal. As far as I can see from the description here. Perfect balance. That's all normal. That's all normal. I don't see anything else substantially different looking through all of this. Let's see. Is FB forbidden being put on the hotbar part of the skill? Yes. Anywhere where it says that you can now put the button on it, that is part of skill consolidation, essentially. If it's saying that they were separated, it's just essentially informing you that you were doing that. Yeah. So, okay, let's see. Changing to Oppo Oppo grants... yeah, no, this is exactly the same text. This is exactly the same text. That's it. Grants depending on the form changed upon executing actions. Yeah. This is exactly the same as the Mediator version. Is Earth's reply the same? That's a good question. That is a good question. It sure do be. Is Riddle of Earth the same? Yes. Oh, man. I can't wait to actually get on to Monk and figure all this stuff out. I'm very excited, actually. Now, I would like to, of course, ask my chat, are there any majorly important changes to any of the other melee DPS from the Mediator? I know people have already gone through and done all of this, so I'm very curious to see if there's anything of major import that you think is important to cover in the rest of the melee DPS. Because from what I could see when I glanced this morning, there was nothing important, like outside of a few more potency changes. Viper, for example, yes, got some potency buffs from what we saw in Mediator. And given they have no defensive, they probably need it. But a few other jobs got some potency increases as well. Chat's letting me know that Ninja in particular got some, unless they're referring to from the live server. Remember that I'm largely comparing it to Mediator. So, for example, with Spinning Edge being 300 up from 220, what was it? It was 280. Yeah, so Ninja also got some like 20 potency buffs here. Gust Slash was 360. It's now 380. So yeah, it's largely just a few more potency bumps in a lot of places. I feel like Ninja had a single potency nerf in the Mediator. Why am I thinking that? Was it you? No, I don't think so. For some reason that's triggered in my brain, but I don't have all the comparisons on hand. Okay. Either way, that seems to be the majority of the cases, that the few more melee DPS is going to be that. Viper combo finisher buff is now 40 seconds instead of 30. You mean reawaken? Wait. That's 30. Where's the combo fit? Oh, just the basic combo fit. Wait, the finisher? You mean the starter? You mean Dread? Are you referring to Dreadfang? Because the finisher doesn't have a buff or a debuff for their basic combo. And also 40 was always the maximum. It was never 30, it was always 40. For all the buffs maximum, that was always 40. That was always the case. It was always 40 seconds. It was just that it's 20 seconds with each application, and then 40 seconds is the maximum. So unless you mean that they did this, where is it? Oh, you mean even just the ability to do their combo finish? Oh, this? I mean, actually, okay, so here's the thing. Technically, that makes downtime phases going into a basic combo easier. But I'll be honest, if you're coming out of a downtime phase, you're probably using your double-bladed attack, and there's a good chance you're reawakening. And so, like, that might matter once in a while, like, occasionally, because you're almost always going to Dreadwinder coming back into it. So that doesn't make that much of a difference, but it's also, at least it's 40 seconds like with everything else. That's fine, I guess. Somebody said that Mekio gets its 2 stacks at 76 now, which would be a little bit lower than it was before. Yeah, because that's when they get Tsubame. So that would mean that the trait down here would be reflective of that. At level 76, there it is. Yeah, the Mekio charge is here. Again, yeah, it was previously 88. Now, was it like that in the Media Tour? The problem is that I'm trying to compare it to the Media Tour, and other people are trying to compare it to the live servers. And so, like, a lot of this information would technically be what we already knew and not new information. So I'm trying to weave through what everyone's trying to say. Yeah, the Mekio at 76 thing was in the Media Tour, for example. You know, so like we already knew that enhanced Mekio was at 76 instead of 88, and that it was the 2 charge. Like that was known. That was something that we already knew. So I think with that, that's really all the major melee DPS changes. The Monk one with Dragon Kick was a major imbalance, and then the added potencies onto some of the other ones should hopefully just keep them all competitive with each other. However, with Viper, like Samurai, having no raid utility and not even a defensive, Viper is going to be the one to keep an eye on because it's going to have to be the most competitive. That's it. Now, moving on to Fizz range. This is one that I can kind of judge a little bit more directly about what is important, about what has changed from the Media Tour. Because there were some things that did straight up not make sense to me, why they were doing it the way they were doing it. And a lot of that had to come with potencies on stuff. So let me get to some of the later skills so that way I can judge them based on their highest level. Now, a big thing to note with Bard is that it didn't really get a lot of potency buffs in the Media Tour. And on top of that, it lost potencies on this. Now, 100 potency on each of their songs was not a big deal. But if that's one of those things where you look at it, you look at every other job getting this buff and that buff, and you're like, how do all the numbers really kind of stack against each other? You know, so this is one in particular I really wanted to keep an eye on, specifically Bard. Because I think we all have a pretty good grasp, those of us who play Fizz ranged, on how Machinist and Dancer fare. There is one thing about Dancer I need to check as well. But Imperial Arrow being 260, that is 20 potency higher than the Media Tour. In the Media Tour, it was exactly the same potency. Iron Jaws, I expected to stay 100. That's, you know, that's just normal. Sidewinder, 320 to 400. That is a potency buff. Yeah. So it looks like all the potency buffs that weren't present in Media Tour are present here. And that is very, very important. Because if they didn't get any sort of adjustment, they would have been in a heap of trouble. Their dots didn't really change. Refulgent Arrow is the same, I guess probably because of what its application use is. I think Shadow Bite is the same as well, 170, 270. What is Burst Shot? Burst Shot was... Are you kidding me? I didn't actually highlight over Burst Shot. I highlighted over it in the upgrades menu. You know what? I remember when I was making the video that I was like, wait, where's my Burst Shot one? Well, I guess I could just compare it to live. This one says it's the same as live, and thus it was probably the same as live there. But I'm just annoyed that I didn't actually have it. I'm just annoyed. I'm just annoyed with myself. Apex, it looks like, had a small potency buff. Let me get that and compare it to what we had in the Media Tour. There's Blast Arrow, which I guess I could technically look at because it would result in pretty much the same thing. Apex, yeah. So this is, so again, it was live value servers there. Now this is up 100 potency at its maximum potency. So good, that definitely needed to happen. Radiant Finale, that's all the same. Heartbreak Shot is 180. What was it in the Media Tour? Heartbreak Shot was 160 in the Media Tour. So this also got a 20 potency buff from Media Tour. Resonant Arrow another one of the new skills. See if that is also different. That was 600 there. It is still 600 here. That is fine. And then Radiant Encore is 900 with 3. This also got a pretty substantial buff. This is 500 at base with 1, which is the equivalent of what would have been 2 codas in the Mediator. So this was the 2 coda value. This is 2, and then this is 3. This is 200 potency higher than the Mediator. So there are some number updates that Bard definitely needed to be at least a little bit competitive with the other jobs. I'm still feeling like Machinist is gonna come out king. Like, Machinist, AoEing on Machinist doesn't feel good. Yes, there is a good way to do it, but it doesn't feel good. But if they got any buffs from Mediator, that would be insane. Now, from what I understand, auto crossbow is still... it's still in a really weird spot. So, yes, is it nice to see that its potency increased, at least from the live servers? Sure. But the functional use of it has become a little strange just because of some of the other stuff in the game. These are all the same values. However, 600, 600, 160 from the Mediator still. But it's... I'm just depressed when I think of AoEing on auto crossbow. The big thing with auto crossbow where it lost out from Mediator is that they buffed all the potencies of the skills. Like, we now have double check and checkmate upgrading from Gauss and Ricochet. We now have upgrades to Heat Blast at the earlier levels with Blazing Shot. And so auto crossbow not resetting double check or checkmate becomes even sillier, because now, not only were these both buffed potency-wise, but they're both AoE. So it's no longer just Ricochet that's AoE. It's what was Gauss upgraded now is also AoE. So by Heat Blasting on a single target, you're AoEing effectively too. So you need to be on like 5 or more targets to even auto crossbow at all. Like, to even think about auto crossbowing, you have to like really want to auto cross. Like, it has to be a huge number of targets to even remotely consider it. So that needs to probably, because now it's what I was already laughing about there being like a disjointed design between single target and AoE. It's now even worse somehow. But on single target, I'm willing to bet you if all the Savage bosses are not ad bosses at all, Machinist is going to rip and tear through the Fizz ranged role. It's contingent on the fight design, and even if there is some of that AoE, like, keep in mind, if there's 3 targets, then you just keep playing like normal, and your AoE is better than it was before, technically. But, like, I think Machinist is going to rip and tear. It has Dismantle. It has, of course, the buffed percentage on Tactician, which all the Fizz ranged have. But even with, like, Wildfire is still not... Like, if Wildfire AoE to boot, like, you would really never auto crossbow. That's maybe one of the reasons why they don't. They really, if they ever do Wildfire AoE, they have to buff auto crossbow a lot in the very, very same patch. They, like, literally don't have a choice. Okay. Dancer had one thing as well that really, really needed to be addressed. And I got to pull up the numbers to see that, because Dancer was a job I was really excited for when I first saw the changes. And then the numbers came into play, and it became a much, much harder thing to be excited about. Now, I need the numbers for standard finish more so than anything else. So standard finish was what, 720? Here, okay, they addressed it. Thank goodness. That's what I was waiting to scroll down. So, for those who aren't super keen on the number stuff, Dancer looked like it was getting a much more involved kit going into Dawntrail. At least just strictly based on what it seemed like they intended. You were getting this extra GCD after all your standard steps. You were getting this extra GCD in your 1 minute. You were just getting a little bit more fun, animation, variety across not just your 2. It wasn't just an extra follow-up button in your 2 minute. There was follow-up buttons at different points in the fight. However, the numbers suggested that it was not worth doing standard step unless you needed to apply the buff, which would have meant just spamming Cascade, Fountain, like your most basic skills for like 55 seconds at a time. And it would have been so boring, like more boring than Bard already is. But they have adjusted the number for standard finish, and they slightly nerfed some of the other skills to make sure that using your dances as a dancer is among the more important things. Tech finish also got a potency buff as well. Let's look at some of the other skills to boot, because we need to know all of this. I probably won't be rating as this job, but still. Even Saber Dance took a small potency hit from the Meteor. It was 540, now it's 520. We do need to see if the updated skill is still the same. We have Talana here to see that. We also, of course, have to look at the new skills like Last Dance. Talana was 440 in the Meteor. Now it's 600. Yeah, they moved a lot of the power into the actual dances to make sure that they were always, again, Last Dance, I know that's a higher potency. I think that's 60 off the top of my head. No, it's more. It's 100. Last Dance is 100 potency more. Okay, dancing is where a lot of the strength is. Oh, you know what, though? Talana, that's a good point. I didn't even notice that. Talana is a 2.5 second recast now. So it's not technically stronger. It's just a GCD and not like a half. That actually, so depending on how your burst works, I actually like that. Because while it's really cool having the really quick activation into the next GCD, a lot of the times, around the time I'm using Talana on Dancer, it's times where I really want to be weaving other things at the same time. And the 1.5 second cast can make that just kind of a worse experience as a whole, as opposed to a better experience, just because it's delaying when I can comfortably do like a lot of the GCDs I've been saving up for like burst windows and stuff. Or I guess on the other side, it helps me quickly get to that Saber Dance before I overcap. So there's some pros and some cons to that. But thinking of the practical application, I think I kind of like that better outside of the 0-minute opener, but it may not necessarily be as enjoyable as part of the initial. Maybe it's just going to be back and forth. It's all RNG, I suppose. Last Dance getting that significant potency buff, really important. Again, I didn't want standard step Last Dance to be something you barely did because it was better to use your other skills. So to me, this is an overall gameplay upgrade to Dancer personally, and that continues to be the case because standard step got buffed. Finishing move, one of their other new skills, also got buffed. You know, now this is 850 as well. Also, of course, grants Last Dance ready. So that's really good. And then Dance of the Dawn looks like it's 1,000. I think that's what it was in the Meteor, I'm pretty sure. Dance of the Dawn was 1,000. So yeah, they made sure that this stayed about the same value. So all their dance stuff up, a few of their basic GCDs down, and I'm okay with that. I still think there are other gameplay related things they could adjust in the future for Dancer, but for what they were going for here, I feel a lot better about that. I still think Machinist is going to rip and tear, and Bard I'm going to have to get my hands on to really tell how it feels. But man, I don't know. Machinist, I personally think Bard got off the worst of all the jobs here, and Machinist probably got off the best, with Dancer kind of hovering closer to Machinist in terms of its adjustments and changes. Then we get into casters. Now, I have heard some buzz about Pictomancer in particular, some number crunching that's already been done. And that's crazy. Now, I don't take much stock in vacuum math, just because we have had so many cases of people saying that the vacuum math on something was not good, and then us getting in game with the exact same potencies and it being way stronger or weaker than anticipated. So that's kind of the big concern with when people start talking about that stuff. But of course, the other job that's still in discussion is Black Mage. You know, Black Mages are, of course, ruining the loss of their non-standard rotation, which largely dealt with optimizing their uptime and fire by utilizing the Mana Tick in order to do more proper movement, more proper swaps between everything, which, as far as I know, is still gone. That being said, Black Mage is likely still to shine in a few other situations, or let me rephrase, still shine when it comes to player expression amongst the casters, at least compared to Red Mage and Summoner. It's still, while the rotation is standard, we all know that the issue that a lot of players have with it is not standard or non-standard. It's strictly just being decent at the job. So I have a feeling your high-skill Black Mage players, while they won't have as hard of a time, they'll still look better than your average Black Mage players by a considerable margin. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't things that could probably do with some adjustment. I absolutely agree that Umbral Soul being level 76 after the changes is probably just not a good idea. Hi, Aloha. As well as a couple of other things. Ice Paradox coming back wouldn't be that much of a surprise. It seems like they really just want to give you more of that power and mobility inside of Fire and make Ice these much shorter phases. That being said, I'm curious. I'm curious to see how it actually ends up feeling going into the game and how the fights actually make Black Mage work. Now, keep in mind, I say I wonder about Black Mage. But if you're talking about a job that you really want to have to think about your setups while still having kind of an easy time between them, Picto, from the moment we saw it and from the moment I played it in the media tour, kind of instantly became the most interesting caster to me, and I don't think that's going to change in any capacity. Even if these potencies are somewhat different, even if some of them are better, worse, I think somebody mentioned Rainbow Drip being something that I needed to go look at, which would be the final skill right here. 1100 grants white paint. Rainbow Drip can be cast immediately. Has the really long cast time at base. Does not share recast. The recast will be applied to the others. Yeah, we knew all of that. Let me see if there's any substantial difference that we have to here. Let's see. Picto, Picto, Picto. Rainbow Drip, Rainbow Drip, Rainbow Drip. 85% fall off. Don't care. All right, let's see. What are the actual important things? Because nobody cares about 85% fall off when I'm hitting one target in the most important content of the game. Strictly don't care because it looks like everything else was probably... Oh my goodness. Jesus Christ. I'm looking at the potencies right now, and I can already tell they're higher across the board on pretty much everything else. This job is going to be something, man. This job is going to be something. Essentially, the only thing that I was made that really changed with the Rainbow Drip is that not just spamming Rainbow Drip into Holy and back and forth as AoE. But these are massive potency buffs across the board. Like, I'm kind of shocked at looking at my thumbnail, at my post here. Even just in the vacuum math, like it's not even about vacuum math at this point. It's about straight up. It already kind of looked like it was good, and now it just looks way, way better. When you already look good, and then you take number buffs across the board from your initial showing, it gets people very excited about playing it, and it gets people very excited about optimizing it, and it gets people very excited about only one caster despite having no res. It also gets people excited about the idea of double caster as a potential thing in endgame raids, which might just happen. might just happen with this one. You got to remember, Pictomancer got potency buffs across the board, had like an AoE cheese thing patched out from Media Tour, and still has an AoE shield, a personal that can become an AoE shield, which I still wonder about the tech. Like if you take the hit and break the shield, but you time it perfectly, because that's something you can do. I've done that on Sage where you like your shields get eaten by an AoE, but you subsequently pepsis them as they're going out, and you get both the shield of efficacy and the actual AoE heal. Like, if you get it just right, I've made that happen before. So the fact that they have the single target shield into the AoE shield, if that tech in that similar fashion is functional, that's going to be that's going to have to get patched. Like, bottom line, that's going to take their raid utility and make it available way too frequently. So I'm very, very interested. Like, Picto is the job I'm most invested in. Like, I'm not going to be rating on it, but it's the job I want to play, like, and learn. It's the job that I want to follow and see what happens to it. And I want to see what it dictates change-wise across the other casters. Because while you saw a lot of play for Summoner and Red Mage in Endwalker, numerically speaking, it was kind of a wash for the role. If you weren't on Black Mage, you were essentially a Fizz ranged with a raise. And I'm not even making that joke because Summoner has no cast times. I'm saying that about both Summoner and Red Mage. Like, they were just such a downgrade in terms of damage contribution over Black Mage that it's a little concerning. And if now there's two casters that sit on that, like, upper echelon, then you really have to ask what the community response is to either bringing double caster, where you have one raise caster, one non-raise caster, versus double melee, where the melee are all looking really juiced as well. I won't be surprised, depending on the number changes going into the 2 and 4 weeks after expansion launch. I wouldn't be surprised to even see this role once again being questioned. Machinist, maybe holds its own and can maybe avoid the congestion of all the strength of the melee and caster role. But I'm more concerned than ever about the prospect of double caster, double melee, and foregoing the 1% buff. Because that's literally every expansion. We've come so close to people just signing off on Fizz ranged. There's several reasons why they don't. I'm hoping the MIT, I'm hoping the 1%, and I'm hoping the occasional use of the LB3 are enough to kind of carry it over. And again, I think Machinist, no matter what, will be fine. I think also LB, I don't remember if LB Gen is affected by not having the 5% because it's been a while, but I'm concerned. I feel like I'm gonna have to play Machinist. I don't mind that. I think Machinist is dope, and I have good ping, so of course I do. Yeah, I'm just concerned. I will say one thing though. At least with Dancer, a lot of its strength was put into its consistent tools. That's good. Like, yeah, obviously not getting the feathers all the time is still not great, and not really a big fan of the whole funnel of super strong DPS with Dance Partner. It just makes any sort of, it puts all the pressure on one person. You essentially you create a loss condition by doing that, by funneling all the gear onto one person and then dance partnering them. If anything goes wrong with them, you've lost. Like, that's it. Like, if things are a little bit more spread out, or you have more consistent DPS numbers across another job like Machinist, more consistent mitigation numbers across job like Machinist, then it creates a more reliable win condition versus kind of a piled on win condition. So yeah, there's a lot of things still at question here. A lot of concerns that I still have. Summoner basically got no changes. From what I understand, Red Mage also didn't get anything worth noting. So that's why I don't really have a whole lot to say, at least not from Media Tour. Although, to be fair, I think Red Mage got the most important change of them all. And that was the Moulinet change, because now whenever I'm doing Moulinet, I can just shout, Moulinet 2! Moulinet 3! And everyone can tell me to please hold my French. And that's fun, in all honesty. I'm just glad that I can yell that every single time I decide that I want to play Red Mage, which is really like never. So that's fine. All the same, definitely still some question marks. We do usually get buffs 2 and 4 weeks in, so don't be surprised if a lot of the stuff we're discussing now pretty rapidly changes over the next over the next month or so. But this is what you're looking at going into the game. Generally, if you like the job changes from the Media Tour, then you'll be okay with this. If you're not really someone who cares about the numbers and you just like the feel of the job, and that's not going to change much either. Realistically, when we talk about the percentage differences between jobs and the potencies and everything, it's a lot of endgame talk. It's a lot of high-level stuff. But content's clearable pretty easily across most jobs. Are there usually advantages and disadvantages? Yes, but you probably don't have anything to worry about. If one of your favorite jobs is something that I mentioned, like Red Major Summoner, that I feel like have too much of a chasm between the casters, that's feedback. But we have those numbers on them because they clear it all the same like everybody else does. So I don't think you have anything to be worried about regardless of the job. But whether or not you like the job, it's important to be open about the feedback that you have for it, whether or not I'm making fun of it at the same time. So with that, that's going to be a wrap for covering all of the job changes coming in Media Tour, at least highlighting some of the more important ones. Thank you to chat for helping with the discussion. Obviously, there's no way I would have been able to track a lot of the more major things that were happening there, but I'm glad we were able to bring some discussions up and have a good time. With that, I'm going to move on to the rest of my stream, as they have all been patiently waiting for me to shut up and finish doing this. And tomorrow I'll be live for Dawntrail probably around midnight, 2 hours before the servers come up, dressed in my Viper garb and ready to go. So thank you in the video format for hanging out. I'll see you in the next one. Chat, let's get back to my normal live stream. Take care. And we're good. It's going to be DT time, baby. Tomorrow. Dude, I'm so excited for Picto. Did Tilana give 50 Esprit? Oh, I didn't even see that. Maybe I just include this in the video and then I do one more outro. I didn't even see that. I was so focused on the potencies. Oh my goodness. No, it didn't. I didn't even see that. Okay, we're leaving this part in the video where I have the sudden realization that I missed something about Tilana. Because, was that in the Media Tour? I didn't see that in the Media Tour. It wasn't in the Media Tour. Yeah, we're leaving this part in. So YouTube video, you get a little bit of the post. The post of it. Yeah. That's big. That's big. Yeah. That's nice. That's correct, Garnet. No, I haven't looked at the Tyrol tourism site. I've been pretty busy the last day or two. Did a bunch of cooking yesterday. I still got a little bit of cooking to do today. Not a whole lot, but as well as some editing for some stuff. Miracle Grow on steroids. Yeah, they got rid of all of its other effects, but that's because of Finishing Move. It just doesn't make sense for it to do the same thing that Finishing Move does. Yeah, Picto's going to be cracked. I thought Picto was going to be cracked before. I'm even more certain. I think Picto, I'm not going to lie, I think of all the jobs they've released since they started adding new jobs, like from Ninja, I think Picto might be the most interesting new job they've ever added from a gameplay and job fantasy perspective. I think second place would actually be Ninja itself. I don't think any job has been as impactful or as kind of realized fantasy-wise as Ninja from the get-go. Like, Ninja was a lot more rogue-ish, but its game impact was so high. Gunbreaker would be third. Gunbreaker was second. It would have been for me Ninja. No, Reaper for me no. No, definitely not Heavensward Machinist, no. Samurai really struggled when it first came out, especially its perception in the game. Dancer, being a Fizz range, largely RNG based buffs, like drew a lot of comparison to Bard, like it, and a lot of it's like, you gotta remember when it first came out, like, yeah, you danced every 30 seconds, but like the whole job fantasy of being a dancer was really just throwing chakrams around. Astro really struggled when it first came out, so its impact was really low. Dark Knight, people struggled with, even if it wasn't necessarily struggling. To Melding and Tenacity. Oh, yeah, and the full patch notes? No, I haven't even looked at it. It wasn't even just that. Identity, how do I put this? Samurai's identity was questioned before it even came out. First of all, people didn't think that they were going to do double DPS, so when it wasn't a tank, like I thought it was going to be a tank, I just didn't think they were going to do double DPS. And people struggled with that. People also struggled with the visual identity of it being more of the old-timey samurai and not the heavy armor samurai, even if it wasn't going to be a tank. And then when it came out, on top of already being kind of judged for being a selfish DPS in the game at the time, something Black Mage had already been dealing with, although Black Mage had kind of already skirted that problem by being really strong. Samurai was only at a moderate strength level compared to everything else, and was also not offering anything. So where it was kind of okay in job identity, the perception of its identity was just doomed. I think Picto, the closest thing you get to that is people think it looks cartoony, like Sly. Aloha, stop. Did Melee have a selfish DPS? Yeah, Monk. Monk was a selfish DPS. As soon as Dark Knight came out, it was no longer useful. Because Dragon Kick only buffed itself and auto attacks from staff hits. On tech, the recap, I saw it on Talana. Talana being 2.5. Oh, and tech is 1. Oh, so it's kind of like the same. It's just that. Yeah, so they swapped them is really all they did. Yeah, and book smacks too. Yeah, Monk was the closest you got to a selfish DPS. Prior to Samurai. And Monk was okay for Prog in A Realm Reborn before Dark Knight. Then Dark Knight came out and monks were given a really hard time. And then they gave it Brotherhood, yeah. And even Brotherhood on release was a really big struggle. Dream of holding wins reply. Oh, did they? Oh, dude, I must have missed so many stuff. Maybe I just leave this whole like post discussion in. There's so many things that it's hard to keep track of every single little adjustment. I'm not even on. I'm looking for wins reply on the dancer page like an idiot. Riddle of Wind. Riddle of Wind. Oh, come on now. 15 seconds. Come on. It was way better when it was 30. Okay, in 8.0, right? In 8.0. 8.0. They'll do it again. All right. 8.0. I promise. All right. 8.0 for sure, Copium. Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah, it's an interesting shift in power for some of these skills. 8.0 Copia. I thought that was a nice little thing. You know what? I feel like it's my fault. I feel like I brought it up in my video and they're like, oh, we don't want that. No. I brought up liking double dots. They're like, nope, never mind. I was like, no. Why can't I like things? Just let me like that.